Hey, it's Liz Kelly, and welcome to the Ringer Podcast Network. This Sunday night, after the final episode of True Detective, we'll be going live for our last Flat Circle After Show with Jason Concepcion and Chris Ryan. You can stream that live on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. And while you're there, make sure to subscribe to our channel at youtube.com/The Ringer as we near 100,000 subscribers.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Watch. Greenwald called in and we talked a little bit about a bunch of the movies and TV shows that we were anticipating for the rest of 2019. Kind of takes us up until the fall. And there's a bunch of cool stuff there. We gave each thing a rating and called it our anticipation index. And then the second half of the show, Jason Concepcion joined me to talk about this funny story that came out about the Lord of the Rings show on Amazon and people having to give fingerprints to get into the writer's room, but also just the way that show is sort of being developed in public as a Game of Thrones competitor or as a Game of Thrones replacement. And then we also talked about what we're looking forward to and questions that we want answered as we head into the season finale of True Detective on Sunday. Obviously, Sunday is Oscars night, but we are going to be doing the Flat Circle live after the finale of True Detective on Sunday night. You can find us about 15 to 30 minutes after the episode ends on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you are watching the Oscars and you're invested in that, don't sweat it. You can catch us on YouTube afterwards. It's the place to find us. And while we're at it, Sean Fennessy and Amanda Dobbins will also be doing live big picture stuff after the Oscars on Sunday night. So we have tons of stuff coming at you on Sunday night. It's must-see TV. It's must-listen-to podcasts. So let's get into today's episode of The Watch.
I need support staff to clear the room.
Stand up and walk. Now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com and calling in live from the Pink Room, it's Andy Greenwald!
Yeah, you don't last long in this room, but what an entrance.
Yeah, seriously.
What an entrance.
Watch out behind
really
you.
Memorable.
Watch out behind you. What's up, Greenwald? It's Thursday. We've got you for a few minutes as you carve out time in your busy TV production schedule. How's everything going?
Good, not production. This is all technically pre-production, I think.
Well, it's all it's all producing dreams, isn't it?
It is. We're having a great time. This is fun. You gotta come by and visit.
It's the Frozen Tundra of Los Angeles episode. I don't know if people know this, but we got a little bit of a cold snap going in LA. And I know that conversations about weather can be boring to some. And for anyone living in the polar vortex, you're probably telling us to go fuck ourselves right now. But I gotta tell you, every day I get up and I think about who I want to be, how I want to present myself to the world. And I go into my closet and I pick out some threads. And then I get to the office.
Can I jump in?
Well, just 1 second, because I got to paint the picture here for you.
I just want to know if this is before or after you have the toast. Because people from last week are hanging on the toast.
Well, what do you mean? People are disagreeing, like they're caught up on my breakfast plans?
No, you just were very, very honest about your breakfast plans. And I want to know when you wake up to make yourself who you want to be. I'm sorry, I blew up your spot here. I just want to know if, does the toast with bananas, is that part of this? The oniony toast and bananas, because your cutting board is not clean properly.
I realized
just
that.
Let me know.
I found out how to clean the cutting board. So that crisis has been averted. You just had to rub it down with lemon.
There you go. Okay.
Now my bananas taste of lemon. But I come to work thinking I'm in Los Angeles where it's never going to be colder than 60. It's always going to be sunny. And it is so cold here, and none of these buildings are prepared for this cold. No. And our building in where we work here has had some heating problems. And by about 11:30 a.m., I would say I look like a character from Manchester by the Sea. I'm just standing around with a hooded sweatshirt and a Carhartt on, doing janitorial work on Route 1 in Massachusetts.
Can I paint you a similarly frigid picture, which is that over here at the production center offices where we are, we have a lovely suite of offices. We're having a wonderful time, and we're so grateful to our hosts. However, this building was constructed for Buster Keaton, and I believe the walls have the same bone density that Buster Keaton currently possesses.
Yeah, and he's like the Grail Knight in Last Crusade.
What I want you to know is that in our writer's room, there are currently 3 space heaters, and the other 6 writers have 1. What I want you to know is that in the same manner in which a slice of bread in your toaster is made crispy with the dual heating method, That is how I sit in the writer's room every day because I am now an old person.
Yeah, you're like Don
bones.
Amici, just like kind of with like five powerful suns like blazing on you.
But you know, this is as good a segue as ever to turn towards the entertainment of the warmer times of year, right? Is that where you were headed?
Yeah, so basically what I wanted to do with you today, because we don't have, like, we've talked about True Detective recently, we've talked about Russian Doll recently, we've kind of wrapped a lot of this stuff up. If anybody wants to get kind of the lay of the land for Oscars, I highly recommend checking out Fennessy and Dobbins over on the Big Picture feed. That's coming up Sunday, and you and I will talk about that next week as well. But this is that moment before the storm where, you know, we've been talking about Roma versus Green Book versus Bohemian Rhapsody for a few weeks, and we've been talking about True Detective for a few weeks. But the floodgates are about to open. There's a bunch of stuff coming in the next couple of months and throughout the rest of 2019. And I thought it might be fun to do a little bit of an anticipation index of stuff that we're really looking forward to in the next couple of weeks. Really, the game starts in the first week of March about when Triple Frontier and Captain Marvel come out, which one of those really appeals to my interests. And then, but we've talked a lot about those things.
Can I just jump in quickly and say there is no least credible time in Hollywood than the 2 weeks between when the first Twitter reactions to a Marvel movie come out and the movie itself comes out.
Yeah.
That said, unsurprisingly, the Captain Marvel early reviews are gushingly positive, and nothing would make me happier than for that to be true. But here's the one red flag I want to just mention now, which is that from what I've gathered from my scientific 45 seconds of skimming Twitter responses, the cat is getting too much burn.
Well, cats are big right now because Oatmeal the cat from Russian Doll apparently already has like a 3-picture deal.
Yeah.
It's got an overall deal at UCP.
Wait a second. I resemble that remark.
Yeah, cats are huge.
I just feel like if you're talking about the cat, then I'm concerned about the movie.
Yeah, but like Widows was an amazing movie, and a lot of people had a lot of good things to say about Olivia.
I'm not saying, what I'm saying is that's easy. Like the cat or the dog should be good in these movies because they are literally trained animals. Like, and people love them no matter what. Right. You know what I mean? Like there could be a serial killer arrested and the serial killer could have a dog or a cat and people would be like, no, the cat was cute though.
Right.
Like,
right. If you're talking about a Brie Larson vehicle and the comments coming out are the cat is great, there's cause for concern. I hear you.
Please note that is not the same if you're calling out the raccoon in a Marvel film, because in that case you were talking about future multiple Oscar loser Bradley Cooper, and that is a different deal.
Yes.
Okay, so Triple Frontier, you're all in on.
Of course, okay, yeah. So what I want to do is, when I'm going to tell you about these projects, both films and these are films and television that we're looking forward to in the next couple of months. You give me a one being my bot army is already refreshing the ArcLight ticket page to get into this thing, and that could be for TV too. But just like that's your level of anticipation, and 5 being save it for Airplane Andy.
And just to be clear, as we get into this, because we're doing this cold, when you say you tell me about projects, you literally are going to be telling me about them for the first time, I imagine, right? Like that's the margins we're working within.
I think that you've heard of some of this stuff.
Okay. We'll find out.
All right.
Okay,
So Captain Marvel, you're going to go what?
You're going to do your number 2, right? For Captain Marvel? Well, that's a tricky one because Captain Marvel, like, I'm going to see. So it has my money, but in terms of my anticipation, honestly, we're like 3.5.
Okay, that's around where I am. That's where I'm at. It's probably an opening weekend thing for me, not an opening night thing. And I will be easily influenced by other people's reactions to it. But I got to see it for the canon, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Triple Frontier, that's a 1 for me. I've already in the jungle for that movie. Like, I've just been doing, like, SpawnCon for it.
What do you call it? I feel like you would know the term for this. Like, you know, what is the term for when you're in the shit, Chris? You know what I mean? Like when you're in the army and you wear the swamp around you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're wearing like the pashmina of leaves.
Oh, sure. Like when you're a sniper and you have like all the, like you have like the leaf coat. Yeah, I guess that's just like immersive camouflage. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, if anyone out there is currently a sniper or has sniping experience, I am curious what that is. Just
I think we have a pretty pretty big church. You'd be surprised who listens to The Watch. Okay, so the Captain Marvel 3.5, Triple Frontier, I'm going to go with a 1. Twilight Zone. So Twilight Zone...
You didn't ask me.
Oh, what's your Triple
I'm
Frontier?
right here.
What's your Triple Frontier number?
3, but if you get me some branded content leaf cloak, it moves up to
So
a 2.
what I'm going to do then is when you come home late at night one night, I'm going to pop up out of your yard in a sniper outfit. Okay, 3, Twilight Zone, which had its trailer premiere, I believe, today. Its first full trailer. There had been a teaser with Jordan Peele just sort of doing the Rod Serling bit, I think during the Super Bowl. But we got to actually see some footage from the CBS All Access reboot of Twilight Zone. It's executive produced by Jordan Peele. I believe Watch favorite Gregory Yatanis oversaw a lot of the production and the sort of the visual look of this show. It stars, it's an anthology series, but so far I know that Adam Scott and Jacob Tremblay are in various episodes. Sana Lathan, Tracy Morgan. It's interesting to kind of be, this is finally here. I would say that I am at like a 3 on this one. Like I'm pretty interested in it, but and I, as you know, because I watched Survivor in bed and Survivor's back, I already have CBS All Access, so I'm all set there. Where would you get CBS All Access to watch this?
No. Now, let me say, I like a lot of the people involved. You mentioned a whole bunch of them. Obviously, Jordan Peele, Lily Amirpour, who directed the Briar Patch pilot, directed an episode, which is pretty awesome. So I'm Tracy Morgan, Adam Scott, like Kumail is in it, Stephen Yeun. Like, this is a great, great cast, a great group of people. I am fond of the original Twilight Zone. Like, I did my semester,
sure,
literally, probably in high school, watching them, and have thought about them since, but have not revisited. I think that this is a reboot that makes a lot of sense for the culture in terms of the types of stories people like to see, and also the vehicle for telling the stories, and that it's an anthology series. It all makes a lot of sense. CBS All Access continues to not make sense to me, but I'm going to give it a mulligan on this one. I guess I'm just not sure. You know, there's something about this that I'm just a little suspect of, and maybe what it is, and this is definitely not a reason not to check it out. But the feeling I get from it is that the Twilight Zone vibe, the type of stories that to my mind are the Twilight Zone, and this new version seems to be quite reverent of the original stories, if not outright influenced by them. It seems like that has become part of the culture to a degree that I don't know if we need this show anymore to provide it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I also think that the way that Black Mirror has kind of fused Twilight Zone narrative tricks with technophobia, it'll be interesting to see how much technology plays a part in the new Twilight Zone, right? Like, because that just seems like something that's really well done right now.
I agree, and I think it's also part and parcel of this crush of reboots or reimaginings of classic IP at a time when the influence of these original things is already so deeply felt and understood. And it might, and it's the same thing that gives me slight pause, not just with the Amazon Lord of the Rings series, but also with the upcoming or now announced Foundation series based on the Isaac Asimov novels that I loved when I was in high school, or the suddenly undormant adaptations of William Gibson stuff. Even some, Grant Morrison, the comic book writer we were talking about on Monday, like if something like The Invisibles, which was hugely influential on a lot of things, including The Matrix, like it's almost as if some of these original things have just become the mines that have already been stripped bare for all the stuff that we now know and love. So it'll be interesting to see when the old stuff comes back, if there's a new way into the old stuff, or if it feels overly familiar just because it's already been stripped for parts.
Absolutely.
So I'm at a 4.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go 3.54 right there for me. Fosse Verdon, we've talked about a lot. That comes right after Twilight Zone on April 9th. So Twilight Zone is April 1st, predictably. Fosse Verdon comes on FX on April 9th. You and I are both in the bag for this. It's Sam Rockwell and Michelle Williams. It's this new take on Bob Fosse and his life, and it just looks fantastic.
Today we got, and I forwarded you the key art from the series, like the poster of Rockwell and Williams, and I'm back up to a 1 now, just from the way it looks.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Avengers Endgame comes after that on April 26th, which we had a lot of fun with the post-Super Bowl show. And the fact that they've spent $1 billion to make this the most expensive episode of The Leftovers ever. Where would you put your number at? We don't have to get too deep into that.
Look, I'm in the tank. I'm a 1. You know, I'm really excited. I'm excited because the stakes for this one are the highest they've ever been for a Marvel movie since the first Iron Man. Not because it's The Leftovers and not because I'm desperate to know if Spider-Man survives, because I'm fairly certain that he does and he has a European vacation to go on. Shout out to the Griswolds. It's that they have said basically they are ending it. I mean, it's right there in the title. And of course there will be more Marvel movies, 1 or 2 months later. But just in terms of the stakes of the franchise and what's going to happen next, and also the fact that we put in all this like blood capital and time into watching and talking about this. And finally, I hope it doesn't actually run 3 hours, but you know who loved Infinity War? This guy. Yeah. I loved it. I had such a great time. So I am looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I'm going to go 1 as well. A month later, where there's this capstone on this sort of long-running IP with Avengers Endgame, we'll get something a little bit new and original and really interesting, while also obviously owing a lot to some of the great sort of science fiction that's come before it. And that's James Gray's Ad Astra, which comes out May 24th. And it stars Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, Ruth Negga, and Kimberly Elise. And James Gray is one of my favorite filmmakers. He made Lost City of Z a couple of years ago, which was a movie I've seen multiple times. If you haven't had a chance to check out Lost City of Z, it's really a remarkable film. And Ad Astra is something I've just been really looking forward to, because I think usually with space movies now, I think that we're starting to kind of use them almost like Westerns, where you can do a lot of different things with your sci-fi movie set in space. And we've got Claire Denis' High Life is coming out, but you've also got stuff like Interstellar and Gravity a few years ago. Ad Astra, Gray has talked about being influenced by 2001 and Apocalypse Now, which means he has my money already. I'm just fascinated to see. This is basically Brad Pitt's father, played by Tommy Lee Jones, goes on a mission in Neptune and disappears, and Brad Pitt has to go look for him. So that's a 1 for me.
How high, and I'm pretty interested in this, and this is something I was not checking for until you mentioned it, but how high is the Solaris factor at play here? Solaris being Soderbergh's remake of the classic art science fiction film, and he remade it with George Clooney. I haven't seen it since probably 2002, but I consider it a fascinating and noble failure. Mm-hmm. And are there elements of that here? Which is to say, only Brad Pitt, and God bless him for doing it, can get a highly ambitious, no doubt highly expensive science fiction movie helmed by James Gray made. And that's terrific that he can. But are we so far down this road of segregated culture, right? Where this will be so highbrow that it will lack the sort of the fun or whimsy or adventure or punch that many people, myself included, want from space movies.
I'm fine with that. I think one thing that the itch you're trying to scratch there is, if a movie asks unanswerable questions, is it the movie's responsibility to answer them? And that's sort of the problem with space movies, is when you kind of are saying, when you're presenting these ideas about, man's place in the universe and all these other things, and then you say, okay, well, we're, the kind of agreement you're making with the audience is that you're asking them to go along with you as you investigate these questions, and you can't answer them because no one can. Sometimes it leaves people a little bit unsatisfied. Now, 2001 is an example where Kubrick sort of made the entire end of the film about the unanswerability of those questions, and people have been studying it ever since because of that. So if he leans into the, hey, I'm throwing my hands up at the power and the scope of the universe, then I'm all into it.
Well, I love that. And I was being a little devil's advocate there,
sure,
because I love that sort of thing. It does feel like that's a line, though. It's a needle that Brad Pitt seems interested in threading in his career, and I'm very glad about that. It's why he wanted David Fincher to direct a World War Z sequel. It's like trying to have highbrow and lowbrow all at the same time. Honestly, from the description you've made of this movie, it sounds like the thinking person's Interstellar. which is a movie that I think would have been more successful if it hadn't tried to make sense,
Right.
or tried to explain itself.
Right.
So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. 2.5.
Okay. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here. That takes us up to the end of May. There's a bunch of stuff that's like very interesting that I'm curious about what you're thinking about it, but it doesn't really have release dates yet. And that's 2 Netflix projects. One is The Last Thing He Wanted, which is Dee Reese's adaptation of a Joan Didion novel about arms dealing in the 1980s in, I believe, Central America. And this is starring Ben Affleck and Anne Hathaway. And Dee Reese, of course, directed Mudbound a few years ago. And I've seen set photos for this, and it just makes me, I'm pumped and jacked for this.
Well, also, as you noticed before I did, that my guy Eddie Gathegi is also in it.
Yeah,
right?
you got to get some scoop for me here.
Co-star of Briar Patch. I will get some scoop. Look, this is, I know nothing about this project other than to say, for me, this remains the dream of Netflix, that they hear that Dee Reese wants to do this, and I hear the name, I hear Joan Didion, and I see this cast, and particularly, like, this is Chris Ryan catnip, this plot.
Right.
I'm not far behind you. Shout out to Oatmeal the cat. This is the dream of Netflix, that they would just say, sure, greenlight that. The word salad of all of the things you just said would not be on the menu anywhere else at this particular moment in American cultural history, and I'm glad that someone is making it. So, having only just learned of it, it's a 2.
So it's a 2 for me, and the other Netflix project that you and I are keeping our eye out for, obviously, is Mindhunter Season 2, which we assume is coming at some point this year, but is so far I haven't even heard anything about it. And if there was anybody who was gonna hear about it, I would hope it was one of us. But
seriously,
I'm sure there's some people who work on Mindhunter who probably hear before us. But Mindhunter Season 2, directed by David Fincher, but also this time directed by Andrew Dominic, who did The Assassination of Jesse James and Killing Them Softly, and this incredible Nick Cave film that came out a few years ago. And it's reported to circle on the Atlanta child murders. And Carl Franklin worked on Mindhunter Season 2. So you've kind of got like 3 massively talented filmmakers working on this. And I think that Mindhunter is going to be the kind of thing that gets better as it goes deeper rather than regress.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's been interesting talking to people, especially other TV writers, about that show, because I think it was more contentious than I thought. And I think that a lot of people, again, this is totally their right, but checked out earlier in the season, certainly than we did, because we saw the whole thing and loved it. But it is the rare show that begins with some very broad strokes, but recognizes its broad strokes, owns them, and then interrogates them. And so by the end, it's just sort of a fascinating, smeary line. And I do think that it will continue to get better, right? I mean, I think that it was noteworthy how interested in its own cliches the show was.
Absolutely.
And I think the sign that it was aware of that from the beginning was casting Jonathan Groff in this sort of other, what in previous eras would be understood as the straight white male straight guy role, and then letting him process things in real time, things that maybe we've become inured to from generations of entertainment, honestly, like Mindhunter, and seeing what actually dealing with and wrestling with the broken perversity of the world.
Yeah, the depravity, yeah.
And I couldn't be more excited, because plus, okay, look, at the end of the day, like, Fincher, Dominic, and Franklin directing something, you have to at least.
Yeah, that's a 1 for me. They could just be filming people
too.
reading the phone book. I want to ask quickly about 2 last things here, because I want to let you go. One of them is City on a Hill, which is coming out in late June on Showtime. And I think when I first heard about this, I was a little like, oh, that sounds like interesting. And the trailer, if you watch it, I mean, like, I think that when you get, so the story of this is set in the 90s. It's produced by Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and Tom Fontana. Tom Fontana's did Oz. He did The Homicide: Life on the Street. He's like a sort of Hall of Fame television maker. And it stars Kevin Bacon and Aldous Hodge in an early 90s Boston setting, where Kevin Bacon plays an FBI agent, a crooked FBI agent, who helps Aldous Hodge kind of pull out the corruption in the city of Boston with the backdrop of like armed robberies happening. And when you watch the trailer, which features like a naggingly catchy song by this guy Sam Fender, who I'd actually not heard of before, you're just kind of like, oh, they made the town into billions. And it kind of speaks to Showtime's ability to manufacture prestige pleasure center fair. You know what I mean?
You've exactly nailed what's interesting about this. And what I would say is, if this was an HBO show, and this sounds totally backwards normally, but hear me out. If this was an HBO show, it would seem intolerable to me. The fact that it's a Showtime show is the best thing that could ever happen to it, because I don't want more of The Departed. I don't want more of that Boston shit. And if I am getting it, I don't want it to be self-serious. I don't want it to be somber. Now, obviously, there will be aspects of the show. I mean, look at, with the people involved. This is a drama. I'm not pretending this is Black Monday. But I think you've correctly identified the Showtime piece of it. And I mean this with actual real praise. Like, I think Showtime angles its shows more towards the pleasure center than HBO. And sometimes that can hurt them. But I think in this case, it might be the spark that it would need to not become a slog.
Yes.
That actually makes me more interested in it, because we haven't seen, crime shows have gotten more and more and more serious, right? And if this is a little Billions-y, I'm interested.
I have one last one for you. So there's tons of stuff coming out in 2019.
Wait, I have one more Showtime one for you that I don't think was on your list.
Oh, okay.
How are you feeling about the Halo show? Only because it was in the news, and I'm weirdly interested in it. I feel like people aren't checking for it. They're not talking about it. It seems
we had talked about all the directors that had run through.
Did.
Yeah. So
we also had talked about it years ago, because this was a big splashy thing for the Microsoft Xbox network that was going to exist, and blah, blah, blah. And then we started to get more interested in it when it was Kyle Killen, who was the first guest ever on Hollywood Prospectus, I think, back when he was making the NBC show Awake. But he is now showrunning this, which immediately makes it a must-watch for me, because I'm fascinated. And then Otto Bathurst was just announced as the director and executive producer. And he's done some of the best episodes of Peaky Blinders and Black Mirror. And again, like, this was one of those giant gambles by Showtime that felt like...
I haven't heard you this excited in a very long time. You're psyched for the Halo show. It's a 1 for you.
I'm really interested.
It's a 1 for you.
It's a 0.5. No, here's why I'm interested. It felt like an afterthought when it fell to Showtime. And I think when we talked about it last a couple of months ago, we were talking about how it just seemed like everyone needed to make their splashy, expensive Game of Thrones. And almost like Showtime showed up late to the party, and there wasn't much left on the buffet line. But what if their timing was smart? What if their timing was brilliant? What if they're watching all their competitors, like Amazon, spend God knows how many, close to $1 billion, making an elf show that people kind of already know
I'm about to talk
ends.
to Concepcion about that, yeah.
But what if Kyle Killen has a way to make space army drama interesting?
I love your confidence.
This is secretly the interesting one.
I love your confidence.
But maybe it is.
Before I let you go, so let's put that at a 0, apparently. That's how hyped you are for Halo.
No, I'm going to defend myself one more point.
God.
Which is the Lord of the Rings thing. It worries me in the same way the Netflix Marvel shows did, because it was a concept first, and then they were like, well, then we'll find writers for it. It felt backwards.
Uh-huh.
Halo is such a blank slate. It's just like a, 2-decade-old now, almost 2-decade-old video game franchise.
I just think that
they handed it to a weird guy.
The roads of Hollywood are paved with the bodies of people who tried to make cool video game shit. It's just...
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I wanted to clear out... I mean, this has been great, because you've just given me so much in this podcast, but I'm going to ask for a little bit more. There's a lot happening in 2019. Plenty will happen after City on a Hill happens towards the end, till the end of the year. But there's one special title, and it's not the kind of thing that you and I usually talk about, but I know it's something that's close to your heart. And I actually took the time to watch the trailer for this, and I have a lot of questions. Greenwald.
Okay.
Where's your head at with Frozen 2?
I can't believe you're teeing me up like this.
When did this shit turn into Dark Knight Rises?
That's my biggest concern. Now,
why is she gotta skip jump through an ocean and climb out of the prison in the middle of the desert with a broken back to go fight Bane?
My guy, every morning, I get into my car with my older daughter and I drive her to school. And we have all sorts of conversations. And this week, a lot of the conversations have been both math and birthday related, where she's like, how old will I be in 10 months? How old will I be in 30 years? How old will you be? Will you be dead? So it's bright and early, good morning stuff. Today, she was asking me a bunch of different dates and numbers. And she said, what about in 10 months? And I said, you'll still be the same age, but it'll be almost Christmas. And then she went, oh, will the new Frozen movie be out by then and will I have seen it? Here's, of all the things you said, and longtime listeners of The Watch will know this to be true, the odds of me seeing any of them, fair to middling.
Yeah.
I will see Frozen 2 multiple times.
Of course you will.
Regardless of quality. And I have seen Frozen 1 many times. And I don't think you could say the same. But I have real concerns that this trailer is like a Chow Yun-Fat film from 1997.
That Elsa's just going to be like running through hallways, killing drug dealers.
Why is Anna just drawing Kristoff's sword? Who's chasing her? Why is the dominant theme Elsa's alone on an island and it's autumn now? I don't get. Now, I get that they want to make it ominous and cool or whatever. It's a teaser trailer. We don't hear the songs.
But is this Empire Strikes Back? What's happening?
This is the sequel problem, because the thing about Frozen, in addition to it being good, is that it is a brilliantly constructed one and done movie. It's a fable, and it works so well, and it's totally contained, and we don't need more. But of course we're getting more. And so at that point, what more is there to say? I guess they're going to be bad guys now? Look, I also can get behind the concept that, like, for the young girls who saw the first movie, they're older now, and maybe it's a little bit more of an action adventure where once again, Anna and Elsa are the action stars and they're not relying on the male characters to save them. And believe me, I completely support this and love it. But yo, this shit looks really dark.
I can't wait to go on this journey with you.
I don't think that's what this is supposed to be, but I appreciate the question. I want the Daddington Hive to weigh in on this. For what it's worth, the Daughter Hive was pretty psyched.
It gets a trailer. 1 from the Daughter Hive. Yeah, some trepidation from Daddington Hive. All right, Greenwald, thank you so much for calling in. We'll be talking to you next week. You have a safe and fun and non-snowy weekend.
Chris, you're always a 1 for me.
Thanks, brother. Coming up in just a second, I talked to Jason Concepcion about Lord of the Rings and True Detective. But before that, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by ADT. When it comes to something as important as your family's safety, you deserve real protection from ADT. Real protection means the nation's #1 smart home security provider is standing by and there for you when you need them. Real protection means having a safe and smart home with everything from video doorbells, surveillance cameras, smart locks, lights, carbon monoxide, and smoke detectors in a system that's custom designed to fit your lifestyle. And setting up custom automations to do things like lock the doors and set the thermostat when you leave. Real protection means staying safe on the go, in the car, or when your kids are at school with the ADT Go app and the SOS button. Real protection means 18,000 employees safeguarding you. Real protection means direct connections with first responders. No matter how you define safety for you, your family, or your business, ADT is there. ADT, real protection. Visit ADT.com/podcast to learn more about how ADT can design and install a secure smart home just for you. All right. I'm joined now by my Flat Circle co-host, my brother, Jason Concepcion. Woo! What's up, man? We can talk a little True Detective in a few minutes.
Let's do that.
We got to get to the bottom of something here.
Yeah.
So Andy and I just got done talking about all these things that we're anticipating in 2019. And,
Wonderful.
at certain points, like it's hard to find out certain things about, what's happening with Mindhunter Season 2. It's under lock and key. Is it going to be about the Atlanta child murders? Who can say?
Of course.
But another piece of pop culture news came across the transom this week, and I want to send out an SOS to the people here. We don't do a lot of investigative journalism or advocacy journalism on The Watch.
Right.
But I think I might have to get one of those PGP keys just for this.
Man.
And it's specifically for the people, and you guys I'm sure you guys are killing it. I'm sure you guys are making great stuff. But the people who are working on the Amazon Lord of the Rings show, because honestly, it sounds like you're working in like a failing Soviet state in the 80s.
I don't know why the Lord of the Rings writer's room can only be accessed by, it's like getting to the knock list in Mission Impossible.
Are we in Minority Report?
Yeah, like what?
Are there two twins in a milk bath somewhere who allow you to get in? So here's what we're talking about, right? this Amazon show, like they've just started the rollout for the Lord of the Rings show on Amazon. They have a $250 million already wrapped up in this thing. Woo! This needs to be a hit for them. I mean, will it eventually matter to Jeff Bezos' wallet? Probably not. But like they need this to happen. Jennifer Salke, who's the head of Amazon, is sort of overseeing this project, and she said recently that there's a fantastic writer's room working under lock and key.
Sounds great.
They're already generating really exciting material. They're down in Santa Monica.
Well, don't even tell us where they are.
Don't
Jennifer.
tell me Santa Monica. Now I'm going to go to Santa Monica in my Aragorn outfit being like, where are my guys? You have to go through such clearance, and they have all of their windows taped closed.
Sounds great.
That's what happens. That's what Michael Shannon does in Bug. You don't have to tape your windows closed. And there's a security guard that sits outside, and you have to have a fingerprint to get in there because their whole board is up for the whole season.
I mean, let's say this. God forbid that anybody spoil Lord of the Rings.
Guess what?
A book series that has been out, like 85 years.
And they just got done making 6 interminable movies about this.
6 movies. Also, like, what are you going to do? Put Led Zeppelin's Misty Mountain Hop under lock and key, too? Like, Robert Plant fucking spoils this story in 1974, guys.
This is the thing, is that, like, secrecy is such a powerful thing right now. I mean, you and I, we're doing the Game of Thrones after show this year. Man. And we, you and Mallory can probably, like, honestly, you could probably Minority Report Milk Bath the last few
I think
episodes.
we could get close.
You could get close. You could be above the Mendoza line. You could make the big team. I know that this is going to be about Aragorn before Fellowship of the Ring. I'm not actually even like a Tolkien scholar.
Right.
But I have like a loose idea of what's going to happen here. And instead, it's like, I think that they're using the secrecy to drive interest. Now, I kind of wonder whether or not we are approaching the end of this a little bit. Like whether or not there's going to have to be a little bit of a turning of the barge so that we can start like sharing shit with people and just being like, you're a grown up. This is a story you're going to be into. Right. Here's what it's about. Just give us a log line. That's all. You don't have to show me the whiteboard. You don't have, but like when you're like, I have to cut another person's hand off and use their fingerprints to get into this room. Like treat me like a grown up.
I agree with you that I think that this is how they're building buzz for it. Like this, listen, our shit is so secretive. I know that you've for everybody out there who's read the Tolkien, who's dived into the unfinished materials, who's watched the movies and the animated movie from the 70s, there's some shit in here that's so new, so mind-blowing that you literally have to like give a saliva sample to get out of the writer's room. But how long can they keep doing this?
So let's say we get this end of 2020, which I have a feeling we might not. I think they want it. I would imagine they would want it for end of 2020. Right. And if they are starting a rollout this far in advance, they must have a sense of when it's coming.
Right.
But like that's a long time to be like, it started with a map.
Right.
You can't get into the writer's room. We're not telling you anything about it. It's like, okay, look, like the difference between Lord of the Rings is something that like there are literally people who just like major in Lord of the Rings at colleges. Like,
they learn Elvish.
You're just gonna like the whole point of having this property is to satisfy that. Like you can't just be like, what if Smaug was a good guy?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like people aren't gonna be into that. I understand. I know what's going on here, but it's just there was something about the way that this was presented that I was just like, why don't you guys just be like, here's what it's about.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think there's something about the way that Game of Thrones was able to capture people's imagination by using shocks that absolutely completely contravened what you expect from a story, from an action story, from a fantasy story. Season 1, if you know nothing about the books, you go in thinking, oh, this is kind of like a fantasy procedural, Ned Stark on the case, he's going to figure it out.
Right.
Oh, no, he's dead. And then you're thinking, oh, Robb Stark, the king, he's married his love, and now he's trying to put the alliance back together, but then he gets betrayed, everybody is killed. And it's just this constant kind of winnowing down of expectations and subverting long-established themes. I guess, so I understand the idea of like trying to generate that with this.
What twist can you honestly have here?
I don't know. I guess I guess we should assume from this that much of the first season of this is going to be young Aragorn. You've never seen this before. Here he is, joining the Rangers.
But is there like the truth about Aragorn that we're like, is there like this idea that like there's something about, I mean, I know he's like Strider, he leaves Gondor, right? Like I'm not trying to get too nerdy here, but like I watch those movies. Like I feel like I have a pretty good sense of that dude's story.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of crazy to be like, oh man, I hope people don't find out that Gollum bites Frodo's finger off and falls into the volcano. That huge twist. Like there's not, all the major twists are just out there. Right. And they've been out there for 80 years. And this is a part of, this is the touchstone of fantasy literature and English literature. So it's just a weird choice.
This was sort of giving me Star Wars anthology movie vibes, where I'm like, I see what they're doing, but I think that part of the reason why Rogue One, I mean, it was a very successful movie, and I think the problems with Rogue One had more to do with the execution of it rather than the concept of it. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting to be like, okay, we've got a piece of this incredibly lucrative, beloved pie. What do we do with it that doesn't feel like a retread, but still has this connection to the material that everybody feels so deeply a part of? Yeah. And in Rogue One, they essentially told a whole movie about a throwaway line, or at least like this thing that happens like right before New Hope, and so much so that the coolest part of Rogue One is when New Hope starts, and you're like, I can't believe this is coming full circle. I wonder whether or not that is ultimately the trajectory for this show. Yeah,
I would assume so. I think, you kind of touched on it obliquely. One of the weaknesses of an execution like this is just structurally, like, Aragorn is going to make it to the end. Mm-hmm. It's not like Game of Thrones, which snuck up on people.
And had 4 heroes.
Right. And was, like a best-selling series, but wasn't widely known in the way that Lord of the Rings is.
And wasn't so closely guarded that they couldn't have made some decisions.
Right.
They could have been like, you know what, Sean Bean, a lot of people like this guy, let's keep him around for a couple seasons. Right. I mean, you fucked the whole story up if you do that.
You can't, it's not like you could be like, oh, I guess, Strider does some other thing and maybe the elves do X, Y, Z. So as a method of ginning up hype for this, I get it. It's just really weird, man. Yeah. you know?
I mean, so from what you know with the Thrones prequel, like, they don't seem to be as like, I mean, I think they're working on it, right?
Right.
Like,
but the thing with the Thrones prequel, as we understand, it's set during the years of the Long Night. So you're talking after the Age of Heroes, which is like, anywhere from, George has shifted what this is, but anywhere from like 5,000 to 8,000 years before the events of the story. So you're not kind of, so while broadly the historical beats of the things that happen, it's not like, oh, Ned needs to make it to the end of the series.
He can't.
Yeah, he's just not there.
Right, that's a really interesting distinction. Okay, so quickly before you go, I want to talk a little bit about True Detective.
Yes.
I definitely feel like it's been cool to watch everybody. Thank you so much for watching Flat Circle and listening to us on the Recapables and watching it on YouTube and leaving comments. It's been very cool to see, despite the fact that this has been on opposite like 9 major national events.
It's like Super Bowl and now the Oscars.
Yeah, and the All-Star Game and everything. It's kind of seemed to have picked up momentum as the season has gone on and people seem really, really, really invested. There was maybe some slow trucking in the middle of it, but like, dude, there's so much stuff that has to happen in episode 8 that I feel like it could be a really exciting finale.
It could be a real barn burner. I think the really neat trick that they've accomplished with this season is that, we kind of broadly know what happened.
Yeah.
But it's still fascinating. There's still enough holes in there that I just can't wait to find out more. We know that Hoyt is involved. We know that he's had the kids somewhere, like in his house, and that he was somehow involved in Will's death. But there's just so much we don't know and so many balls in the air. I really can't wait to find out what
it's going to be a real referendum on like what Pizzolatto's capable of.
And
I've been impressed with it this season, but I think that there's like, it's pretty much like the Emilia stuff has to like have a satisfying conclusion in some way and actually be explained, because that's the card that he's been holding back.
Yes.
She has had She is unlike a lot of characters. She's really signaled the fact that like she was a different person before we saw her on the show, and that she's capable of being different people. And we don't know what happened to her in between 1990 and 2015, that she's not in the 2000. I mean, she's passed away, but we don't know why. And she is probably the most interesting remaining mystery of this season, and it'll be really cool to see how they figure that out.
I think one of the things I'm really impressed about since the introduction of old Roland into old Wayne's life is just, this is something we had talked about off screen, was like, oh, I'm a little worried about what that's going to be. It's these two old guys.
Are they going to be like wheelchairing around Arkansas?
Trying to solve a case. But it's actually, there's been just a ton of pathos there with kind of like Roland's natural tendency to want to take in like broken people and strays, and then having to care for Wayne, who is absolutely shot at this point. That's been really, it's been really affecting. And I agree with you with the Amelia stuff. Like, it just feels like they've hinted at real depths to her that we have not yet been plumbed. There's a lot of sizzle there, and I really hope there's a stake.
Yeah, in retrospect, as the season went on, I think one of the times when it really kind of took flight was when it loosened up a little bit from just Wayne's perspective. And despite the fact that Mahershala is giving this incredible performance, I thought like it got a little bit more live when it was from Tom Purcell's perspective or from Roland's perspective, or a little bit of Henry, and like it was just moving around a little bit more. And I think that that's going to come into play. Like, I want to know how Amelia saw this, because right now we get her and she'll have a fight and she'll have a speech and she'll have like her book and whatever. But that one moment at the reading was really effective, and I think it would be really neat to see like what happens in these intervening years. Yeah,
I think it's funny because season 1 is so lauded and remembered for just the immediacy of the vibe that was created between Rust and Marty, and Rust Cohle being one of the great TV inventions of the last 5 or 6 years. And I think that kind of overshadows how vague the ending was and how little was really settled, So it's just gonna be interesting to see like what happens in this final episode, because there's just a lot of question marks.
Okay, so you can watch me and Jason on Sunday night. We're going to go live like a few minutes after the episode airs. So I would imagine if the episode finishes at like 7:15 West Coast, 10:15 East Coast, we'll be on around 7:30 to 10:30. And if you're watching the Oscars, don't sweat it. We'll be there on YouTube for you. You can hit us up with questions that night. We'll try to get to some audience questions. And we're watching along with you, man. We're just going to try and figure it out. So thank you so much for stopping by the watch, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Today's episode of The Watch was brought to you by ADT. When it comes to something as important as your family's safety, you deserve real protection from ADT. Real protection means the nation's #1 smart home security provider is there for you when you need them. Real protection means 18,000 employees safeguarding you. No matter how you define safety, ADT is there. ADT, real protection. Visit ADT.com/podcast to learn more about how ADT can design and install a secure smart home just for you.